My Hebrew Israelite brothers and sisters, the 12 tribes of Israel scattered all over the earth. Let me take this moment to say welcome back. And so, let me thank you for your subscriptions, for your likes, for your comments, for your prayers, for everything you do to advance this ministry, the journey back to Abaya. I want to take this moment also to thank you. Thank you so much for your subscriptions. Thank you so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And as we go into this session, we're going to be dealing with, the man's, the praying man, right? We're going to be dealing with a man in pain as he prays, and just going to talk about David, our cousin, King David, and as you read the Psalms and other historical books, you see how much he suffers, and in all of these things, my brothers, my sisters, in all his suffering, he never give up. He always pressing forward. Psalm 38 is what you refer to as a heartfelt, composition. This word is attributed to David. It serves as a, penitential psalm, expressing his deep remorse and anguish. If you remember all of the things that happened to him and some things that he did, excuse me, some things that he did negative things. Now those stuff came back to haunt him, My brothers and sisters, is showing us here that, there are consequences, okay, for our misdeeds. Consequences for misdeeds, So, as we look into the context of this psalm, the authorship, we know that it's David, okay, and he is referred to as the renowned king and the renowned psalmist, because many of the psalms that we've read, and some of them that you haven't read yet, right? These are, psalms that he did. He wrote them during the time of severe affliction, and there were times also of great distress of mind. People around him, his friends, even his own family member, were after him. The occasion for this psalm here, as mentioned, some scholars also want to speculate and relate to David's sin that with Bathsheba. If you remember the story with Bathsheba, how we took her, away from Uriah, and all that kind of stuff, and all the incident that happened that sent Uriah to his death, and then but Psalm 38, it was written as, we would refer to as a memorial, and it is serving, to remind David of his senses of sin, all the things that he did, intensifies this psalm, intensified, the fact that, all the afflictions that he suffers, everything that he went through, it reflect in this psalm, it reflect. But one of the things that I like about this psalm, and I like about David, is the fact that when David finds out, that he is wrong, he is not afraid, to confront it and to say, look, he's going to Yahuwah and he's praying and he's asking Yahuwah for forgiveness. And so we know that he asked Yahuwah, not only to forgive him, but also to deliver him from these sins. Okay? So the psalm begins with the plea. It begins with the plea as we look at verse 1. It begins with the plea. Oh, Yahuwah, rebuke me not in thy hot displeasure, or rebuke me not in your wrath, neither chase me in your burning anger, as we see in verse 1. And so David acknowledged, the weight of his guilt. And, and this is something that as believers, we have to be willing, to acknowledge when we done something that, hurt Yahuwah. When we do something that hurt him, then something that, disappointed, we need to go to him and we need to, ask for forgiveness. Because if we don't, just like David, okay, whatever sin and whatever misdeed that we do is not only hurt us physically, but it's also hurt us spiritually, or physical health, If you notice in the Psalm, David talks about no soundness in his bone, right? And and his spiritual well-being, all of this was because of his sin. And so he vividly described, the fact that the pain, caused by the arrow that Yahuwah was sending, you say, let me tell you, my brothers and sisters, when we do something wrong, and Yahuwah gonna chase, He's gonna chase us, He's gonna chase us, my brothers and sisters. And when I the chasing that David experienced it, he talk about the arrow, that and the pressing weight of Yahuwah's judgment upon him, And so despite his suffering though, he clings to his faith and never cease to seeking Yahuwah's mercy, and his healing. So my brothers and my sisters, as we see here, David wrote this psalm, and it's a reminder. It's a reminder, my brother, my sister. It's a reminder that, Yahuwah is seeing everything that we do, and we cannot hide from him. Anything we do, we cannot hide from Yahuwah. And my brothers and my sisters, if we don't keep a short account, when we messed up, we are the ones who are going to suffer. You're gonna have sleepless night, okay, and sleepless night going to, linger on, and physical, you're gonna suffer physically, my brothers and my sisters. Excuse me. You're gonna suffer physically, and not only that, you're gonna suffer physically, you're gonna suffer spiritually. So we need, to keep a short account. We need a short account. Okay. I kind of pointed out a couple of verses in the Psalm, and we're gonna go back to verse 1, but I want us to look, because there are a couple of verses that I highlighted here that we want to see as we introduce the psalm, and before we dive into it, look in verse 4, because verse 4, he talks about his guilt, that his guilt overwhelmed him like a burden too heavy to bear. Okay, that's verse 4. Okay, look in verse 9. It says, all my longings lie upon, lie open before him. Okay? And Yahweh, it lie open before Yahweh. And his sign is not hidden from Yahweh. Okay? So he's calling out to Yahweh. In verse 15, he said, Yahweh, I wait for you. You will answer me. And so he was waiting patiently, and he had the assurance that his prayer was being heard, that Yahweh is going to answer him. And in verse 21, he said, Yahweh, do not forsake me. Do not be far from me. And then he said, my Elohim, or my Yahweh. So this was something there that we see that then in the introductory part of it, excuse me, here as we look, there are a couple of questions that we need to ask here as we look at it, okay? And how does David express his physical and emotional suffering, as we see there in Psalm 38? How? Okay, and to answer the question is that you can relate to these feelings in your own life. You can relate to these feelings in your own life. In verses 1 through 8, how does David perceive, how does he see the hand, of Yahweh in his affliction? How does, and then how does David acknowledge, how he acknowledge how his acknowledgement of his own sinful influence, how his acknowledgement of his sin, how does that influence his understanding of his suffering? And that you need to go ask a question, you can answer that. Because when we sin, my brothers and sisters, and we acknowledge it, okay, then it means that we are agreeing with Yahweh. We are agreeing that we have sinned, that we have done wrong, okay? And the question is, why do you think David's friend and his companions stand aloof, from his affliction? They don't want to have anything to do with it. They want to stay away from it. As a matter of fact, some of them were adding to the affliction, okay? Some of them were adding to affliction. And so what do David please, what is his pleas to Yahweh reveal about his relationship with him? Okay, so when we plead to him, when we send our plea, like we know that we have done wrong, and we are suffering from it. We are under the heavy hand of Yahweh. But our relationship to him, to Yahweh, got to be intact. We can't avoid being his son or his daughter if he calls us to be his son and his daughter. Okay? So we have to show him as a son, our daughter. We have to come to Yahuwah and we have to show him that we are sincere and that, you know, we repent and we're really serious about this relationship, that we want to make it stronger, and we want to do everything to turn away from the things that, you know, made us go astray, you know. So it's important, you know, to maintain that relationship. And then the next question is, how does David express his isolation? We see that in verses 9 through 14. And, you know, we're going to get to it, right? And then how can we, you know, solace in God, you know, I don't want to say God, but in Yahweh. How can we experience, you know, this closeness to him when we feel, you know, that, there's a feeling of loneliness, and, you know, we are experiencing that feeling of loneliness. So sometimes we feel like we're by ourselves out there, and like nobody else, you know, is there with us. Nobody is there to assist us, you know. So we have to, you know, remember that, you know, Yahweh is always there. In verses 15 to 22, David's his plea for forgiveness says, you know, that his faith in Yahweh was pretty strong, you know. He believed that Yahweh was going to help him. So, you know, he praying and he reconciled himself before, you know, Yahweh. You know, his belief in Yahweh is that the fact that Yahweh is a loving Yahweh, and that, you know, with his current affliction, he know that Yahweh is going to be there for him because he's giving himself to Yahweh, and Yahweh is not going to turn his back on him. So, you know, he informed, you know, us, you know, this psalm inform us that, you know, our prayers, you know, in the face of affliction is important. We need to pray. We can't give up, you know, because in affliction, in sin, you know, in guilt, all of that, sometimes Hasatan will come and say, look, you have done too much. You can't, he's not going to listen to you. He's not going to hear you. So what I want you to do is to just take whatever you had and run, just go, because he's not going to listen to you. He put me in mind of when Moshe was leading our ancestors out of Egypt, and they were in the wilderness. And remember, Moshe had gone up to the mountain to hear from Yahweh when he went up there to get the 10 Commandments, the Decalogue. You know, the people down there were saying, he's not coming back. They were saying like, yo, let him go with, you know, because the Elohim that he is telling us about does not exist. You know. And then he went up there and he was coming down, and when he came down halfway down the mountain, he could hear, you know, the noise. Of course, Yahweh told him what was going on down there. But he came down, and as he get closer, the noise get louder. And guess what? When he came and he saw what was happening, you know, he was so shocked that, you know, and he get upset and he dropped the stones, the tablets rather, with the writing, and so what happened? The people started, some complaining, some were penitent, some were saying, nah, they don't care, like, you know, that kind of attitude. Okay. And so, but because some realized that they had done wrong, you know, and so David's faith and trust in Yahweh. You know, can help us today. You know, our faith and trust in Yahweh today. You know, and in today's situation, you know, we can, just like how David did there, you know, we can trust Yahweh. In today's situation, my brothers and sisters, there's all kind of things that are going on, you know, and so we must respond. You know, even though our friends and family are there to remind us of the affliction and all of the things that we go through, we don't listen to our friends and family who's trying to discourage us. We want to continue. We want to be able to you know, have that feeling that Yahweh, you know, and that belief in our heart that Yahweh is not going to turn his back on us. You know, he's not going to be like some of our friends and family members who condemn you. Okay, if you say you know, you a Hebrew, you know, why you do this, and okay, all of that thing that he did is coming back to haunt, you know, and, you know, all of that kind of stuff. But, you know, we have to do like David, my brothers and sisters. We got to do like David. We have to practice, you know, practical steps. Practical steps, you know, we have to take practical steps, you know, to remain faithful, you know, to Yahweh. Amidst the trial and amidst, you know, the challenges that we're going through, okay? We have to do that, okay? And so we're going to stop here and we're going to continue. We're going to continue on the next session. We still have a few questions that I need to ask ourselves. You know, when we find ourselves in certain situation, we still need to trust Yahweh, and there, like I said, practical step that we must take. So we're going to ask you at this moment, my brothers and sisters, to be a blessing to someone and walk with the King. Shalom.